Today, we have got some courtroom moments on your screens of the moments where judges announce their verdicts on the most haunted gang members. Let's start. Abel Gallegos.
With your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
Abel Gallegos appeared in the District Court of Jefferson County, Colorado, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole plus 163 years for his role in the kidnapping and murder of Simone Duran Gallegos, who was 28 years old at the time, along with two other people. Due to their involvement in the revenge murder, Alonso Quintana and Rene Francisco Rosales were convicted guilty on various counts. She had seen Gallegos approach Iran on social media, and Duran met with him, Rosales, and other people at a house in Denver. Quintana and Duran were victims of a shooting at the beginning of 2018, and Duran identified Gallegos as the shooter. The shooting took place in Adams County. After that, Gallegos led Duran to a parking lot where he was introduced to Quintana. The two males attacked her when she was riding in the trunk of a car. They then took her to a remote location in Golden, where they shot her 10 times before pouring gasoline on her body and setting her ablaze. Finally, they buried her there. The judge, Philip McNulty, stated in the sentencing judge that he was outraged by how carelessly this act was committed and how much disdain was shown for the life of a human being. You are not permitted to reside among us any longer. Coming up next, we have Lockett.
And to have an appointment of counsel to assist you in doing so.
In the fall of 2016, 5 individuals were found guilty of torturing and killing a police informant, then concealing the body of the victim in the trunk of a car that was parked at a public transit station in Atlanta. The victim's name is Christopher Lockett. In addition to being found guilty of murder, numerous felony offenses, and participation in a violent street gang, Lockett was also found guilty of the following. Christopher Dean, age 33, was murdered at his home in Atlanta by a group of guys who were members of the Gangster Disciples Street Gang after they learned that Christopher Dean had served as a witness for the police in California in the past. Before Dean's body was placed into the trunk of a Toyota Camry and abandoned at the home MARTA station, he was subjected to physical and sexual abuse, including being sodomized and shot twice in the back of the head. In October of 2016, Lockett lied to Dean about the reason he was at the home he shared with his brother on Sandy Creek Drive and convinced him that he was there to conduct a drug deal. After that, a group of individuals assaulted Dean, hitting him with a 2x4 and a crowbar for more than an hour to demonstrate to other gang members that cooperating with law enforcement would not be allowed. Lockett received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole for his crime. Green received a sentence of life in prison with 3 years added on, and Clark received 2 consecutive life sentences plus 5 years. Well, if you like this story so far, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now let's keep going. The next one on the list is Brooks and Xavier. Life sentences were handed down to both Brooks and Xavier Gibson in this case. According to the prosecutors, not a single defendant had displayed any sign of regret for their actions. The hand of Ricky, when the jury in the Clark County courtroom handed Ricky Hand a sentence of 40 years in prison, he had a surprise up his sleeve, quite literally. He was being sentenced for his role in a spate of armed robberies with a gang, approximately 30 in all, which he linked to past drug usage. The crimes were committed using a firearm. 46-year-old Ricky questioned the magistrate. "Did you just sentence me to 40 years? Sir, you just handed me 40 years. Then, wouldn't you know it, he groped for something concealed beneath his arm. He concealed pill bottles that contained feces and urine by concealing them in an arm sling that he was wearing. Within a few seconds following the outburst, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a bottle, and flung what seemed to be pee and feces at members of the courtroom audience. Officials in the courtroom were able to put him under control. He entered a guilty plea in the hopes of receiving a reduced term and receiving assistance for his ongoing drug problems. In the end, he was only charged with 7 of the claimed 30 robberies. Then we have an MS-13 gang member. An alleged member of the MS-13 gang will serve 55 years in jail after being found guilty of the murder of a teenager from Lynchburg. In 2017, the body of 17-year-old Raymond Wood was discovered in Bedford County with 29 stab wounds. In addition, the evidence demonstrated that Wood and Rodas were familiar with one another. In addition, the evidence showed that there was a string of text conversations sent by Rhoda in which she arranged a fictitious drug trade for marijuana to lure Wood to the location where he was ultimately killed. The other defendants, including ourselves, got together in Lynchburg before kidnapping Wood and taking him from his residence. It was reported that Wood was yelling for his mother up until the point that he was strangled to unconsciousness in the back seat in October. We were judged guilty of killing Victor after a jury deliberation. The Commission of Murder in the First Degree recommended Rhoda receive a sentence of 35 years in prison, 10 years in prison for the crime of kidnapping, and another 10 years in prison for participation in a gang. The suggestion of the jury was taken into consideration by Judge James Updike, who subsequently handed Rodas a sentence of 55 years in jail. Rodas is one of the 6 individuals who have been charged in connection with the death of Wood. And the last one on our list for today is George G. Weld. George Jewel Thomas, the feared head of the 2/8.
Hierdie oortuiging indien nie daardie sterk karaktereienskappe positief sou aanwend, u sukses van enige onderneming sou kon maak.
Gang in Bishop Levis was found guilty in the Western Cape High Court and given an effective sentence of 175 years in prison. Each of the 7 murders for which he was found guilty earned him a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. In May, Judge Chantel Fortuyn concluded that Thomas was responsible for the following crimes: 7 counts of murder, 2 counts of racketeering, 3 counts of belonging to a criminal gang, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit a crime, 10 counts of inciting the commission of a crime, 3 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of housebreaking with the intent to commit robbery, 3 counts of theft, 11 counts of illegally possessing firearms, and 10 counts of illegally. Thomas was found guilty of some homicides. Angelo Klassen on February 28, 2008 near Elsie's River. Gunston Martin and Yusri Abrahams, who got married in Westbank on February 28, 2008. Haywin Stridham in the city of Bishop Levis on November 5, 2008. Cecil Barnes, who passed away on October 16, 2009 at his residence in Bishop Levis. Gresham Boysen on October 26, 2009 in Kleinvley, and Nadine Davids on the 14th of February, 2010 in the town of Bishop Levis. At the beginning of the case, which took place in the Western Cape High Court 4 years ago, initial charges were brought against Thomas and 18 of his co-defendants. After further consideration, the charges against Fred Williams and Jason Steiner were ultimately dropped against them both. Williams was killed not long after his acquittal from the charges against him. Initially, there were 166 separate counts against the gang. Thomas, who was handed the most severe punishment, was found guilty on 53 separate charges. Peter McNeil, Derek Klassen, Giovanni Kannemeyer, Alfonso Van Heerden, Herman Wakefield, Mohamed Stemmet, Jerome Karlmeyer, Ashley Apollos, Kenneth Levita, Howard Jansen, Ronald Swartz, Gregory Meyer, Ashraf Reichleaf, Rodney Joubert, Ashwin Charles, and Reyes Dennis were also handed sentences for their roles in the crime. Thomas is also being charged with 2 counts of racketeering in addition to the 3 counts of attempted murder, 10 counts of inciting people to commit crimes, 11 counts of unlawful possession of firearms, and 11 counts of unlawful possession of firearms. Throughout the entire event, Thomas maintained a cheerful expression on his face. Those who were in the dock with him maintained their emotionless composure as fortune found them guilty of various offenses.